Welcome back, guys, or if you're new to my channel, this is Automotive Anonymous, and that's the recently redesigned 2026 Chevy Traverse. But more specifically, this is the LT, or the base model of Chevy's three-row crossover SUV, and it's in a color that they like to call sterling gray metallic, which on a sunny, kind of cloudy, overcast day like today, I think it looks absolutely fantastic and really complements the curvature of this SUV quite well. Well, this is one of the newest and most interesting three-row crossovers on the market today. It's not perfect, so today I'm going to share the good, the bad, and the ugly of the 2026 Chevy Traverse to help you guys at home decide if it might be the right vehicle for you, or if you should leave it at the lot and look at the other three-row SUV competition. So today you can expect to see a walk around, all the specs, initial driving impressions, 0 to 60 on GPS, and then my final thoughts, and huge thanks to Twin Falls Chevy in Southern Idaho for letting me borrow this one for the day. I'll link them below if you're interested, because they sell below MSRP, they ship all over the country, and with that said, let's dive right into this review. And thank you so much for watching car videos on YouTube today, but if you get anything out of this video, you like the Chevy Traverse, or you just appreciate the effort that it takes to make a video like this, please consider liking this video and comment your thoughts and opinions below. Basically, that lets me know to make more stuff like this. It helps the video get shared, but it'll also help you by having YouTube then choose to show you more stuff like this. Thank you so much. But if you're new to Chevy, or the Chevy Traverse, there's a few interesting things that you should probably know. Chevrolet is an all-American automaker. They were founded in Detroit, Michigan in the year 1911, and when they were 98 years old, in the year 2009, the very first generation of the Chevy Traverse started to roll off the assembly line. This is now the third generation. It did start a couple years ago for the 2024 model year. They are assembled in the United States. This one specifically was assembled in Lansing, Michigan, which is pretty cool. And they sell about 60 to 80,000 units every single year, which is actually fairly respectable for a three-row, full-size crossover SUV. These do start at about $40,000. The way this LT sits with all of the destination delivery and extra options that it has, it is nearly a $48,000 vehicle. And I do find it interesting that for being a very powerful 328 horsepower turbo 4-cylinder engine, which by the way, this is a brand new powertrain for this new generation of vehicle, and let me tell you, it's pretty stout. It's interesting that this is the only three-row full-size SUV that I have driven that comes standard with front-wheel drive, even though this does have the $2,000 all-wheel drive option, which I don't think this basic trim level has a torque vectoring all-wheel drive. I think that is reserved for the higher trim levels. It is interesting that this is over 300 horsepower front-wheel drive, all out of a turbo 4-cylinder. And for about $48,000 after destination and delivery, this one actually has a lot to offer, and it really feels kind of like a modern version of an old-school Chevy SUV. And there's a lot of things that I like about it. For instance, because this three-row SUV market is so competitive, I am thrilled that Chevy really put the effort in making this an actual safe vehicle. So even on the base LT trim level that this is, it's expected to be a top safety pick for the 2026 model year, just like it was last year for 2025. So not only does it have really good crumple zones to help protect you and your family, but beyond that, you have a bunch of active and passive safety features to help you avoid accidents. So even this example has really bright LED headlights, turn signals on the mirror, a 360-degree camera, blind spot monitoring, adaptive cruise, and lane keep assist. And while I have driven better lane keep assist options and systems, this one does not have the Super Cruise. I think that is available on the higher trim levels. I imagine that is a fantastic system. This one does let you wander around in the lane a little bit, but it still usually does work on fairly straight roads for at least about 20 seconds, so it does work pretty decently as far as I'm concerned. But beyond that, you have a lot of other goodies waiting for you on the interior. You have a very basic heads-up display related to the safety features. You have a heated leather-wrapped steering wheel, heated leather-wrapped power front seats. Again, you have a 360-degree camera, but you also have a camera for the rear view mirror if you want to use that, because sometimes it can be difficult to look past the three rows of this SUV. And you have a lot of other nice features, including a remote start, roof rails, 18-inch wheels, that you'll just have to see the rest of the features throughout this video. And for being a full-size three-row SUV, keep in mind that is for the unibody classification. That is not for the body on frame. If this was a full-size body on frame like a Suburban or a Yukon XL, it would be about 2 feet longer, so keep that perspective. So this vehicle weighs less, it's easy to maneuver, it's easy to park in most average parking spots, but it also is big enough to feel confident and stable on the road. Overall, it is about 17.1 feet long, which is actually pretty large for a full-size SUV and up to about a half foot longer than some of the competitors from other American and Japanese automakers. The wheelbase is about 10 feet, which is fantastic. It's roughly 6.6 feet wide, nearly 6 feet tall, and then this big behemoth, it still weighs about 4,800 pounds, which is maybe a couple hundred pounds more than some of the competition, but part of that is because this has the all-wheel drive system. And even with that, the payload capacity is still 1,678 pounds, which is about 500 pounds more of payload capacity than a lot of the competition. Chevy really knocked it out of the park on that category. But ultimately, this still only tows about 5,000 pounds, which is about the limit for most full-size unibody vehicles. But hey, you could tow a Traverse behind a Traverse if for some reason you got a 2-for-1 deal. And then between the front-wheel drive and the all-wheel drive trim levels, you have only about 6.7 to 7.7 inches of ground clearance. I imagine this is closer to the 7.7 being all-wheel drive, but you can see there are a few limiting factors underneath the vehicle, a few items that stick down low, and the ground clearance is measured from the lowest area. Otherwise, it has a 349 final axle ratio, and it can do a full circle in just under 40 feet. The last couple things to mention out here is the gas door is located on the driver's side, which I like out of convenience. But unfortunately, when you lock the vehicle, the gas door doesn't lock. So the bums might try to siphon some of your 19.4 gallons of gas. The way that this vehicle is configured with an 18-inch wheel, it is rated for about 20 city, 24 on the highway. So your max road trip and range is about 465 miles. And all of those numbers are pretty much on par with the majority of the other 3-row crossover SUVs. And then this does have a 255/65/18 tire. It is a Bridgestone on this specific example. It has about 9/32 of tread, which is pretty average for an OEM tire. And I do think that that wheel, kind of the silver and gray theme, looks pretty good, especially in this metallic gray paint color. Anyways, this is your key. You have lock, unlock, remote start, power liftgate, and panic button. But just leave that thing in your pocket because you do have proximity key features, not just on the front, but on all 4 doors to lock and unlock the vehicle, and that's pretty cool. The driver's side door panel is where things really start to get interesting, and this Traverse really starts to feel like a modern, old-school Chevy. Not only do the doors open really wide, but the materials, while being fairly nice for this being the LX or the luxurious touring trim level, which is kind of funny that that fancy of a name is technically the base model, the door panels actually look really good, and they're a higher end plastic synthetic material than you usually find on base model Chevys. I think it's really comfortable, it's going to age well. You even have some nice white Hobby Lobby stitching right there. Decent bottle and snack pocket. They are separated, just like the kids in the back seat, so that they don't fight and mix together and jingle around. Although this would be nice if it was like some Volkswagens that do have kind of a cloth liner, so that really helps with other sounds coming in and through into the cabin. But anyways, you have the power liftgate button. You have the speaker. This does just have the basic system. This is not an upgraded system, and it does sound fair or average for this class. There's nothing on the door sill, but you do have some pretty decent factory Chevy mats with the Chevy bow tie. You even have a dead pedal. You have the hood release. I can't see this listed for a knee airbag, although I would have thought this would have one for being a top safety pick. You do have the OBD2 port. You have all of your different modes that you can pull up onto the screen, all-wheel drive or front-wheel drive, auto start stop, dashboard lighting, that's the electronic parking brake. You have vents, you have the lighting stock, the turn signals, all that stuff. Paddle shifters on the back. But for this one, it's just for the radio. Just radio and volume controls. You have tilt and telescoping features. Leather wrapped steering wheel. It's heated. It actually gets really warm, especially on the top. And then this is your seat. It's powered. It's leathered. It's heated. The bolstering is almost non-existent though. So it's going to fit a lot of different body types, but it's not going to hold anyone in very well. Nothing up top, no sunroof or anything. But just like the Volkswagen Atlas I hopped out of a couple days ago, this one has the tunnel storage, which I really like. Sitting inside this Traverse LT actually feels really nice and feels a lot higher end than a base model. Everything is comfortable, soft touch. The dashboard, or the belt line of the vehicle with the dashboard, is really pretty low, so you have good visibility. Unfortunately, you are a little bit more limited by the hood. It does stick out high and go pretty far. Part of the reason this looks fairly aggressive from the exterior, but that's kind of a form over function trade-off, unfortunately. You can see the basic heads-up display. The horn sounds pretty loud, sounds kind of like a truck. Again, you have the paddle shifters on the back. Those are just for the voice and the volume. When you fire this vehicle up, all these reflective screens kind of get a little bit less reflective. You can see the basic heads-up display. And thankfully, even though we do have HVAC controls in the screen, We also have them right here, so Chevy has not abandoned the HVAC controls, which I really appreciate. Otherwise, you can customize the gauges a little bit. The main button to do that is going to be right here if you want to go through your maps, your different displays. But that's more the stuff that you play around with on your own at the dealership. Anyways, this screen, it does have Android Auto, Apple CarPlay. I don't like that everything is getting connected to the screens, including how to turn on the lights. It's a several step process if you don't want to just leave it on auto. Even to turn off traction control, you have to go into there. You can see the 360-degree cameras. They work very well, and it's cool how you can configure them. And a lot of Chevys, you can actually drive down the road with the cameras on. Speaking of cameras, there is the rear view camera. So you do have a little bit better visibility if you start getting comfortable using that. It does take a while. It's kind of strange at first. But anyways, you have plugins, a huge storage area with the phone integration that's kind of cut down, which I really like. More HVAC knobs, buttons. You can see what a 16-ounce water bottle looks like. It easily fits. You have more storage. Guess what? More storage. More storage. There's a lot of storage. This whole transmission tunnel is all storage. Do you have sunglass holder? Yes, you do. Otherwise, you just have some lighting up top. It's LED, which is pretty nice. You can see pretty well into the back if you turn your head, and I think that's LED, but it almost looks incandescent on camera. Anyways, guys, we're going to turn this off and hop into the back. The back of the Traverse is really nice. This is one of the very few three-row SUVs under $50,000 that has proximity key features on the back seats. The Maroni sticker is puny. Look how easily it fits on this. There's so much surface area to the glass, really good visibility. And then the door panel looks exactly the same as the front. You even have the same white stitching, same chrome type of piece and accent. You don't have the divider for the back seat, unfortunately, for the storage, but you do have a nice long pencil tray right there for some reason. You have the window control. Unfortunately though, this, just like the Atlas I hopped out of the other day, and unlike the Honda Pilot, it does not have the cup holder. I want a cup holder for a back seat. But you know what's really interesting that I have found? Not only does this door open really large and make it super easy to get kids, pets, anyone, you know, with less mobility easily into the back seat, but unlike the Chevy Colorados that I've driven a lot of lately, this has a B-pillar handle. This is how you're supposed to do it. And this is only about a 6-foot tall SUV. Anyways, you can drop the seats, they can tumble around a little bit, but just sitting behind this driver position at 5'11", there's plenty of room back here. You can easily grab the grab bar and slide around a little bit further back, or probably, yep, even get my knees into it if you want. But even with the seat all the way back, I have cup holders. I have air controls. I have some plugins. No heated seats on this specific example, but I do have captain chair armrests. I can easily wander my way into the back seats. They are fairly tight, especially when the seat is this far back. But if the second row occupant is being generous and they're not being, you know, overly conservative in saving their own legroom, you could fit full-size adults in the back seat. I think it's better served for kids or smaller adults, but you can do it and it would be okay for a while. There's also really good headroom in the back because there is a little bit of a hump. And then just like minivans or airplanes, you have that style of vent, which is actually pretty cool. But anyways, let's hop out and I'll show you the hatch. I think the back of the Traverse, especially in sterling gray metallic, actually looks pretty decent. These LED lights look really cool. Kind of reminds me of the C8 Corvettes with kind of like the fish mouth opening right there. Long LED light and then the bow tie blacked out right there. You have the chrome accents, chrome bumper tips. You can see that they are fake. The dual exhaust, you know, the actual inner pipes are right there. Again, it can tow 5,000 pounds. It has the backup lights right there. It has the sensors. It has the backup camera. It has the reverse mirror, the digital display if you want that. But anyways, you can get into the back a variety of ways. You can push the button that's on the dashboard, climb through the back seats, use the remote, but because this vehicle is still running, the remote likely will not work, so I'm just going to use the button right here. It is a power liftgate, and then because this vehicle, for being a full-size crossover, is up to a half foot longer than some of the competitors, it actually has a little bit more storage than the majority of them. So back here, instead of having 18 to 20 cubic feet of room behind the third row, you have 23. It's very wide. The bumper is not excessively tall. It is kind of high, but I don't think that's gonna be too difficult. It's a little bit lower than my hip line. And the mouth of the door opens really wide. But again, to use your 23 cubic feet, you're gonna be stacking stuff. you don't have the same, use as if it was a longer, lower loading floor. So keep that in mind. Down here, you actually have some extra storage, which probably plays into the 23 cubic feet. And then if you unscrew those, you can access your temporary donut spare tire. When you lay down the third row, you have about 58 cubic feet, and the third row lays down nearly flat to the back. But when you lay down the second row, it's nearly flat, but there is a bit of a gap. So you're not gonna be able to lay perfectly comfortably without having a good mattress or something that can kind of fill the gap, fill the bridge. And then it has 98 cubic feet, which is actually very impressive. And then when it's time to lower the hatch down, this does have a power liftgate, so we can just push it right there and move on to the passenger side. The passenger side of the Equinox really doesn't have anything that you haven't already seen. Turn signal on the mirror, the 360-degree camera, blind spot monitoring, and then a little reminder that these are heated and that objects in the mirrors are losing the race or they're closer than you appear. Depends on what your scenario is, I suppose. But the door opens up really wide. You have all the same controls other than, not the same switchgate controls for the windows and stuff. And then no power seat. You're gonna have to pay a little bit more money if you want a powered passenger seat, but it is heated, it is ventilated, and it seems to be just as comfortable per my backpack support. Overall though, this is actually really nice. I love how much storage it has. Sure, I would love even more storage with an upper glove box or something like that, like a tray for the passenger. But honestly, there's plenty to go around. And that glove box is actually fairly large for a full-size SUV compared to some of the other glove boxes I've seen lately. So with that said, let's come around to the front. I'll pop the hood and I'll show you what this new 2.5-liter turbo engine that makes well over 300 horsepower actually looks like. Under the hood, you have a 2.5-liter turbo inline 4-cylinder engine. It has 16 valves. It has direct injection. It has an 8-speed transmission connected to it. And it's actually pretty stout. With the big turbo on the backside of the engine, it makes a whopping 328 horsepower at 5,500 RPM and about 326 pound-feet of the twisty stuff at 3,500 RPM. So the torque does come on a little bit higher in the RPM band than some of the other vehicles. So it doesn't punch and hit you quite as hard as some of the vehicles that maybe make that torque at 16 or 1,700 RPM. But this thing builds kind of like a naturally aspirated engine, because in the world of 4 cylinders, 2.5 liters isn't necessarily small, and it's actually a pretty straightforward looking engine. You have the air filter in the box, the piping, the plumbing that quiet it down. It goes through the turbo on the backside of the engine. It gets all spun up. Then it comes through the intercooler on the front and then into the intake manifold right there. It is transversely mounted though, so the 4 cylinders are like this, because remember, this can be just a front wheel drive vehicle. You have the engine mount right there. You have the serpentine belt, the alternator. It does look kind of tight because this is a big engine, but I'm sure once you start pulling off the air induction side of this, the maintenance items aren't going to be too difficult. Then you have the battery. You have all of the reservoirs. This even has an oil dipstick. It takes 0W20 oil. You have the battery, you have the fuse box, and overall, I'm really excited to show you guys how this powerful 4-cylinder engine drives. It's kind of crazy that this makes almost 60 horsepower more than most of the competitors' 4-cylinder engines. So let's see if you can actually feel that, at least in the seat of your pants. And with that said, let's time travel and teleport to my favorite road. Initial driving impressions of the 2026 Chevy Traverse, and the first time that I have driven this new 2.5-liter turbo engine. So let's get up to speed. It's very responsive with this 8-speed, and already we are at or just over the limit. Anyways, driving the Traverse feels kind of similar to the older generation that I've driven before. Visibility up front is really good. The windows are overall pretty large. Having the rear view mirror really helps to cut down from having to look through the interior of the vehicle. The side mirrors, they could be bigger. They are kind of small for how big this vehicle was, and just the other day I hopped out of the new 3-row Volkswagen Atlas. That thing had bigger windows, or bigger side mirrors I should say, but at least you have blind spot monitoring, you have most of the safety features, although the cruise control does let you sway around a little bit. It does seem to work for quite a while, and I can only imagine that Super Cruise on a more equipped trim level would be fantastic. The heated steering wheel, it does get hot, especially on the top. It's a little bit less proportionate than the heat that you feel through the bottom, but it does seem to be a full 360. I've had the heated seats on for a while too, and they're not the hottest in the class, but they are warm enough that I think most people are going to have a fantastic time with them. And when you really slam on the brakes and even come to a complete stop, it doesn't seem to be too much nosedive. I do have it in all-wheel drive right now, When I have it in front wheel drive, this thing can do front wheel drive burnouts if you launch it with a little bit of RPM, which is pretty fun. But you have good visibility, you have good cup holders, you have good seats, everything is ergonomically pleasing. The bolstering is not insane, so it's gonna fit and accommodate a lot of body types, but it's not gonna hold you in place very well if you do go around corners quickly. And then the speaker system sounds good enough that you and your family can enjoy jamming out to some tunes, but it's a little bit shallower. It doesn't have the depth of a more powerful system. So you might want to shop a higher trim level if that is something that really matters to you, or go aftermarket. But anyways, just driving this thing around, I don't know that it handles quite as good as the Volkswagen Atlas from just the other day, which is the most recent reference point in my mind. But overall, it's fun to drive. I love the column shifter. I love that this is a Chevy. I love that it has a 2.5 liter turbo engine, but although this has the most power in its class compared to a lot of the competition, which is limited to about 270 horsepower, it doesn't necessarily feel faster. Third gear and beyond, I will say, pulls a little bit harder than some of the competitors. At least the butt dyno feels that way. But we're gonna see what it actually does 0 to 60, because I'm not convinced that this is the fastest in the class despite being the most powerful. But hey, it has the highest payload, and that's pretty cool. Anyways, test drive one for yourself. These are just my subjective thoughts and opinions, and let's get to the private road. 0 to 60 in the 2026 Chevy Traverse. Keep in mind, density altitude is about 6,300 feet, so we are about 10% down on power, even though this is turbocharged. I have it in sport mode, traction is off. We'll do a brake rev, and we'll see what this can do in all-wheel drive mode, because when I leave it in front-wheel drive, all it does is a big smoky burnout. With the extra horsepower, third gear actually pulls pretty well, just like first and second. True 0 to 60 came in at 8.22 seconds. Not too bad for a 3-row unibody SUV. My final thoughts of the 2026 Chevy Traverse is this was a really interesting SUV. And in the $40,000 ballpark, I actually think that this is a really good deal. Of course, I'm going to advise you test drive the competition. Test drive a lot of these vehicles back to back. Make sure that you find the right vehicle for you before you get too emotionally attached to any of them. It's kind of like a puppy. You got to make sure that everything is in order before you commit to it. You got to make sure that you can take care of it, that you can feed it, water it, and take it on walks. And the Chevy Traverse really isn't that much different. This is cool. A few of the reasons I like it is it's obviously a top safety pick. It's very safe, at least compared to the competition. It has some of the higher ratings. It also has an 18-inch wheel with a 65 sidewall tire from the factory, but then it also has one of the larger and certainly one of the more powerful turbo 4-cylinder engines, a true 8-speed automatic. And sure, if front-wheel drive is your thing and you don't necessarily need an all-wheel drive system all the time, or a torque vectoring or the most advanced system if you don't live in, deep snow areas, this is pretty cool. But the interior, it feels solid. It feels well put together. There were no squeaks, no rattles. I'm sure the JD Power Awards ranked this very highly. And then it has enough tech to make you feel like you're driving something really special and something that's worth the price point. You have a 360-degree camera. You have blind spot monitoring, turn signals on the mirror. You have so many cool attributes and aspects that I think this is a really fun vehicle, and I highly recommend you test drive one for yourself. So if you are in the market for something like this, check out the Twin Falls Chevy. Otherwise, if you got anything out of this video, please consider liking it. Comment those thoughts and opinions below. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I can't wait to see you on the next one. Until then, see ya.